You wake up not screaming, you're an Ultramarine. Ultramarines don't scream. But somewhere deep inside, where a normal person would have a soul, and you now have a neural implant and an unanswered question, something howls very quietly. Welcome to the life of Demetrian Titus. Captain, then not a captain, then captain again, then lieutenant, then nobody's quite sure what. The only Ultramarine in history that the Warp wants to personally recruit and the Inquisition wants to personally arrest for exactly the same reason. Get comfortable. This is a long one. Quick recap first. Because Space Marine 2 has been hyped for a while, and most of you already know the broad strokes, Titus is the captain of the Ultramarines' second company. Keyword was. But how did he even become captain? This is where the circus starts. The previous captain, History, didn't bother saving his name because History only remembers winners, died on a rescue mission for a single neophyte named Misanthius. Literally one guy. Misanthius is the type of space marine who holds his bolt gun backwards and genuinely can't figure out why it hurts. The Eldar took him prisoner, apparently as a souvenir. Instead of writing acceptable losses, continuing operations in his report, the captain grabs three brothers, Titus included, and personally goes to pull this specific Misanthius out of some specific Eldar bushes against striking Scorpion Exarchs at night with no backup. Logic? Absent. Motivation? We don't leave our brothers behind. Result? The captain takes a Reaper launcher shot from an Exarch who appears from the bushes like the final boss of a stupid side quest and goes down. Titus cuts off an Eldar's head, throws Misanthius over one shoulder, the dying captain over the other, and carries them both out.
The captain's dying words are roughly, "We saved Misanthius. He'll be a great warrior someday. You're the captain now, Titus." Titus sighs, "Misanthius will die in the next campaign. But that doesn't matter anymore. Titus now has rank insignia and problems." This is how career advancement works in the 41st millennium. Not merit, not exams. Your boss dies in your arms and says, "You're in charge now. Congratulations."
10 years pass. Titus is a captain now. Respected, experienced, with a service record longer than a bolt gun. He ships out to the Forge world Graia, orcs show up, then chaos, then demons, standard Tuesday for an ultramarine. And here, pay attention because this matters. Something happens that will break his entire life in half. The Thousand Sons are operating on Graia, running a ritual, a big serious one, involving the warp and very bad consequences. Titus ends up at the epicenter, and instead of going insane, getting possessed, or simply dying like a normal person would, he does none of those things. The warp doesn't touch him, demons can't get in, he stands in the middle of a chaos ritual like a brick wall in a hurricane. Why? Nobody knows. Titus himself doesn't know. It's just a fact of his existence, inexplicable and deeply inconvenient. Brother Leandros, the one who always does everything by the book and is therefore the worst person in any room, sees this and reaches the only conclusion he considers logical. Titus is possessed. The Inquisition must be notified.
Leandros reports him. This is the moment to stop and talk seriously, because this isn't just a plot device. It's one of the most accurate things Space Marine ever says about the nature of the Imperium. Leandros is not a villain. He's not a traitor in the classical sense. He's a model soldier doing exactly what he was taught. Codex Astartes. Protocol, order, report suspicious behavior, and that is precisely what makes him a monster. Titus made the right call. He saved lives, stopped the ritual, survived something no one else could have survived. But he can't explain his survival because he doesn't understand it himself. And in the Imperium, what cannot be explained is called heresy. Inquisitor Thrax takes him away. And so begins over 100 years. Sit with that for a second. 100 years. Titus spent more than a century in the Death Watch, the Inquisition's elite kill squad, where Space Marines get sent on the most death sentence missions in the known galaxy. This isn't an honorable posting. It's an honorable exile. Stay alive or don't. Either way, we'll use you while we figure out what you are. Over 100 years, Titus didn't break, didn't get possessed, didn't die. The warp continued ignoring him with a kind of insulting consistency. What that means, nobody still knows. And that in itself is an answer to a question nobody asked out loud. Because here's the theory, and it's a beautiful one. Tzeentch, the god of change, schemes and plans within plans. In Space Marine 2, his people, the Thousand Sons, are circling Titus again, still looking for something. The Lord of Change Imara is personally present, and the voices from the Immaterium aren't random demons. This is a specific, addressed message. Will you be joining us soon, brother? Brother, not mortal, not servant, brother. What if Titus's resistance to the warp isn't immunity? What if it's a mark? What if someone in the warp claimed him a long time ago? And that's exactly why standard corruption doesn't work. The seat is taken. That doesn't make Titus a traitor. It means he has no good options. He's either what Leandros thinks he is, a threat, or what the warp thinks he is, an asset. And the only thing standing between those two poles is his will, which, it has to be said, is made of something harder than ceramite. Robo to Guilliman, Primarch of the Ultramarines, Regent of Terra, Lord Commander of the Imperium, the man who woke up after 10,000 years in a coma and immediately asked for the reports, personally pardoned Titus. This matters. Guilliman isn't just a bureaucrat with a halo. He's one of the few beings in the Imperium who actually thinks. And he looked at the Titus file and concluded roughly the following. This man fought better than anyone, was betrayed by his own brothers, spent a century being punished for surviving, and still didn't break. That's not heresy. That's an ultramarine. Titus comes back, no longer a captain, a lieutenant now, a veteran, with new Primaris brothers, Charon and Gadriel, who look at him like a living legend. And now, the Space Marine 2 campaign. Because this is where the real meat starts. Nova Magnoris, a world in Ultramar's 500 worlds. Guilliman has launched his grand campaign of restoration, a master plan, 4 fronts simultaneously. Take back everything lost to Mortarian's plague. Titus arrives, Tyranids. Then it turns out that beneath the Tyranids, literally underground, are Necrons, and leading the Necrons is a Necrozor named Amentar. Not just any Necron, a destroyer, a creature whose sole purpose is the eradication of all organic life in the galaxy. All destroyers are insane, killing everything in an ecstasy of slaughter. Amentar is the only one among them who kept his mind, which makes him roughly 10 times more dangerous. Amentar is collecting shards of his god. These are fragments of the Catan, star gods that the Necrons devoured and broke into weapons. He's been collecting them. Why? To complete something massive. What exactly, we're not told. This is called the Hook for Part 3. Titus kills a legendary Necron champion. Name classified. The lore simply says the greatest swordsman of his age in his sector of the galaxy, one-on-one. Then Titus kills a Norn emissary of the Tyranids. For context, a Norn emissary in the tabletop game is comparable to a Primarch in combat stats. Titus kills it, alone. This is either the greatest feat in chapter history, or there's something about Titus we're not being told. Amentar leaves, doesn't die, leaves with the shards in an unknown direction. The warp whispers where to go next. Running parallel, the Thousand Sons. Imara, Lord of Change. Not just a villain for the sake of having one. Lords of Change are entities with IQs in the billions who have existed since before the War in Heaven and plot schemes on the scale of millennia. And this specific Lord of Change is personally interested in Titus. Personally. Which is itself a diagnosis. If a house-sized general from the Army of Chaos has personally noticed you, you are either very important or very interesting. Most likely both. The voices from the Immaterium ask Titus, will you be joining us soon? The warp doesn't take him, but the warp doesn't let him go either. He's there, like a stain that won't wash out. The question the game asks and refuses to answer, is it immunity or an invitation? Is Titus resisting the warp, or is the warp just waiting? This is the quiet nuclear warhead the game drops at the very end. An Inquisitor of the Ordo Xenos has found something. Exactly what? Unsaid. But here are his words. Aware are his words. The most unholy Caesar of power. The Imperium has known since the reign of Gogavendir. I will find it. I will show the galaxy what Gilliman has been hiding. I will show everyone what he truly is. Ordo Xenos. Not Hereticus. Not Malleus. Xenos. An inquisitor who hunts Xenos has found dirt on the regent of Terra. What does that mean? Here are the entertaining theories. First, Gilliman is working with the Eldar, specifically with Yvraine, emissary of Ennead, with whom he has a diplomatic relationship. A very close diplomatic relationship. The Ordo Xenos may have found correspondence, meetings, agreements, everything you'd need to frame it as a betrayal of humanity. Second, something connected to the Necrons. Amentar left with the shards. Gilliman knows more than he's saying. The lines intersect somewhere uncomfortable. Third, and this is the beautiful one, Gilliman is planning something the High Lords of Terra will never approve. Something involving reform, unification, that very legion he was never allowed to create. And the Inquisitor knows it. The truth is ahead in Space Marine 3, which we haven't seen yet. And the final bomb, everyone. At the very end of the campaign, a signal. The system identifies an access code, checks it again. Every local system, one by one, says no error, no damage, no abuse of authority. Because the code belongs to Lion L. Johnson, Primarch of the Dark Angels, who showed his first signs of life 3 years ago and has been silent ever since. Decoded message. Brother, we need to talk. Brother. He's talking to Gilliman, two Primarchs, both awakened into an age of chaos, both carrying secrets, one with a shadow war against chaos he's been waging quietly for 10,000 years, the other with a restoration plan that his own Inquisition is trying to bury. The Dark Angels are a chapter with a secret, the Fallen. A legion that split during the Horus heresy, half went to chaos, and the other half has been hunting them ever since in absolute secrecy, telling no one ever. The Lion has always known everything and never told anyone. That's just who he is. And now he's calling Gilliman. At the exact moment when the galaxy features Necrons carrying shards of dead gods, the Thousand Sons taking a personal interest in one specific Ultramarine, an Inquisitor sitting on damning evidence, and Amentar who flew off in an unknown direction. Coincidence? In the 41st millennium, there are no coincidences. Only the plans of Siench. This is the question that's been hanging in the air the whole time. Titus isn't just a very good space marine. There are plenty of very good space marines. Titus is an anomaly. The warp won't touch him. Daemons don't want him. He kills the Norn emissary alone. Lords of Change take a personal interest. None of this is normal. Either Titus is something new, an evolution of the Astartes that the warp simply cannot digest, or Titus is someone's plan. And someone, a very long time ago, very quietly, very carefully, was preparing him for something enormous. And that someone isn't necessarily anyone we've seen on screen. In the Imperium, there is only one entity that thinks on that scale, whose silence is itself a decision, and whose gaze from the Golden Throne may once have paused on one specific Ultramarine. But the Emperor is silent, and only the God Emperor knows for certain, and his silence, many believe, is condemnation.